So I go to pick up my mom to go to dinner with Eljoy for Mother's Day, and we're having the regular conversation. And of course, the thing that was on my mind that I had to mention was the fact that, what do you think of Obama and same-sex marriage? Poor Mama White. Her response to me is, I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it. I'm like, but Mama, I'm not saying you have to talk about it. I just want to know, what are you, I'm not asking you to agree with anything. I'm just asking, are you still voting for Obama? My mother said, I don't want to talk about it, which was a red flag for me. I was like, whoa, did my mother just freak out and now not want to vote for Obama over this? And so I won't drop it in the car. Like, I just can't drop it. And she's just like, I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it. I want to talk about it. I was like, Mama, we have to talk about it because I feel like this is important. And the reason why I started to force the conversation with her was because I was nervous. Because the conversation about this and the black church has gotten very, very weird, and I would even argue a bit ugly, because people are not respecting people's faiths. And they start yelling at people like, you should accept it, you should accept it, you should accept it, and that's it. And then people who don't agree all of a sudden freak out, and then they shut themselves down and just like, in the blood of Jesus. And it's like, whoa, that's not, now they have a blood of Jesus shield up, and now you really ain't going to be able to have a conversation with them at all. Once you have
the blood of Jesus shield.
Right, when you have these conversations, that's what people throw up, the blood of Jesus shield, because you ain't nothing but the devil, and you just trying to ruin my day. And so you can't come at them that hard. And so I felt like I had to discuss it with my mother because I understand her faith, and everyone who listens to the show knows that Elon's not religious. Elon's, like, at this point either qualifies for agnostic or atheist, but I know how to talk to her, and I know how to not mess with her faith and have the conversation outside of that. And that's why I kept doing it. So like, literally, we were in the car and we talked about it almost all the way to the door of brunch when I met you, Eljoy. And my mom just kept, at one point my mom started to sing church songs to keep me quiet.
She was jukeboxing?
She wasn't jukeboxing. It was the equivalent of putting your finger in your ears, because I was like, but Mama, you have to understand. And she was just like, something like, his eyes on the sparrow. I know he watches over me. I was like, Mama, I sing because I'm like, but Mama, I'm happy. I'm like, Mama. That's what happened. And so then we had food, and we sat down and we did all that good stuff. And then in the car, dropping everyone home, the conversation comes up again.
Because I asked.
And Eljoy did, because I was trying to be good at this point. And Eljoy just drops a bomb. They're all three. It's like they are in the back of the car in like full on black cute. Lady church.
It was so cute. Do you have the picture?
It wasn't a good picture. They were just like,
it's all, so picture.
All churched out and everything. And then Eljoy just goes, "What do y'all think about Obama with same-sex marriage?"
So,
like, what do you?
So I asked. I said, "Hey, Barbara Ann, what do you think? Are you not voting for the president because of the same-sex marriage thing?" And then she responded. She did not start singing Negro spirituals and all that stuff like that. She gave a very rational description, did she not?
Actually, and I once she answered, I actually was very, very appreciative of Eljoy bringing it up, because at first I thought we were about to get yelled at for the next hour of us being in the car, dropping everybody off. But she said, "No, I'm still voting for him. That's just one issue." And that was her response. I was like, yep. What?
Really?
And I said, and so I'm in the front of the car, and I go, really? That's such a reasonable response, Mama. And my mom in the car.
And so I didn't know that you guys had this whole conversation. So when you were doing it, I was like, what is he doing?
Right.
And so my aunt kept talking, and and then after my aunt would finish the sentence, Elon would go, Mama. And I'm like, what is going on?
Now, what I was really appreciative of, and I feel like this is another way this conversation has to happen, is that people from outside of the church can't yell at people inside the church. You just can't do it. But the church can have the conversation out loud. And kind of like influence each other, because like as her mom, my Aunt Barbara Ann was talking, like she was making very reasonable arguments. And by the way, it's hilarious because this is not the first time I've seen this, but a lot of people are arguing that like, I don't really believe he believed that. He just doing that for political reasons. Like he don't really believe that. And so we
don't know what's in his heart,
right? And so Eljoy and I are in the front, and I'm just going, Lord. But then all of a sudden I was like, you know what? That is a great argument, and I'm not sure that is a bad way of approaching people about this. Like, just like flat out manipulate them. Like, do you really think he believes that? You know him. He said he a Christian. Do you really believe that? Of course but it's political. Just let it ride and just shut up. If you're trying to get people to go out and vote and not do something stupid, I would argue that is reasonable.
So my mom is reasonable because that's what my mom blew it all off. It's a campaign. Campaign year.
A lot of people are saying that, and which is hilarious. Which is why when everyone started to go out there and start talking about the black church, how they know what the black church is going to do, and they're going to turn their back on Obama, like, you have no clue how they're going to respond. The fact is that I've seen people say that, and I've heard other people say that, like, actually in the church, in the car, she was like, that has nothing to do with us. That's not the church. What he's doing right now. That's government. There's a separation of government and church. Now, if it was a church, now I don't think it's right. And I'm like, okay, just do not, as long as y'all don't all of a sudden start rallying to shut people down, listen, that's my issue.
Right. And so then they went into, church and Bible mode, and there was just, and she was like, sinners gonna be sinners, and then they gonna do what sinners do, sin. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. And then me and Elon kept looking at each other like, all right, okay.
Yeah, because the thing is that they were judging us because we were in the front. Obviously, like when they start talking about what they think of about homosexuality and stuff like that, it's just like, Lord, y'all are. I don't even have the energy, because the thing is, I really don't have the energy. But the thing is, like, I can't. There's nothing I can say
to prove to an 86-year-old who believes the Bible back and front.
Right. There's nothing I can say, because the thing is that you can argue that I should have fought and I should have yelled at them and stuff like that. There's nothing I can do,
and I don't want to get a beating.
It's the basis of their entire beliefs. What I can do is try to make sure that they do not inflict their belief system on other people. Right. And that is my main goal. Make sure you do not affect anyone else. Make sure that you are not pushing legislation. Make sure that you are not voting for legislation. All that stuff. That's my job, I feel like, in certain situations.
It's just quarantine and containment?
Quarantine and containment. That's what, because obviously, and the next generation, because the next generation is changing. Even within the church, the younger folks don't believe that. They are way more open to equality. Mm-hmm. And so, old folks, I can't fight with them. I just can't. And I would argue it's a losing battle, and you can do it, but it's.
But and they're also not the type of people, just like I said, know my family and knowing their position on what what they believe about homosexuality. But they're also not the type of people that's just like, oh well, he's gay, so he can't come in my house, or I can't hug. Like they're not. I'm going to actively discriminate. I'm going to actively, from their perspective, if you are a liar because they believe that homosexuality is sinful, right? So for them, they're like, no sin is above any other. So
that was the argument that I made in the car. I was like, and when I said it, also I got a bunch of amens and praise Jesus in the back of the car.
Yeah.
When I specifically said, I thought all sins were equal. They're like, they are equal. I said, so homosexuality is not more than, let's say, adultery. They're like, nope, not at all. I said, and there's no laws against adultery. And they were like, that's right. And I'm like, thank you. This is it's the angle that you have to come at them with. That, like, the fact is that there's a lot of things that people don't think are right. It's just a question of you have to make sure that they don't decide that the church should try to legislate government with that. Mm-hmm. And that is my big thing. So finally, when we dropped off my mother got dropped off first. So I took out the car and I said, Mama, I love you dearly, but I'm not going to drop this. I said, what are you voting? Are you voting? She goes, well, I'm not voting for Romney. I'm like, I know you're not voting for Romney. And I said, I also know that above all else that people died for our ability to vote. She goes, people did die for our ability to vote. People did die for our ability to vote. I said, so that means that you can't vote for that dude. I said, for Romney. And are you going to let one thing you disagree with the president about decide that you aren't voting and you're going to turn your back on these things? She goes, no, but it's just complicated. I mean, I have a lot of feelings about it. And I was like, that's okay.
And I think like we said, the thing is you start the conversation, right? So it's not an end all. It's like you don't end with the conversation in the car, right? So you started this conversation. They don't believe they should be actively discriminated against. That's just because they're thinking of it as a pure Christian principles, Christian principles, and this is another human being. And so you are able to start at that basis, and then you can go back. And then and sort of have the further discussion on, well, why do you think it's sinful? Why do so then you are able to sort of layer this conversation. And there are many conversations that you can't expect to sit down and have a conversation one time. With someone is just like, okay, now you should change your beliefs.
Right.
That doesn't, there are some things, if I bring a picture of water in front of you and I tell you this is not, that's facts. Like, you can look at it, you taste it, it's like, oh, this is a water, this is vodka. Like, they're factsing, and then you need to walk away from the table looking like, okay, all clear liquids are not are not water, right? But if you want to have this multi-layered conversation, about, you got to take into what people have grown up, what they thought all the time. Like I said, they're 86 and 67, years old. They believe in a religious doctrine and live their entire lives by it. You can't expect to sit down and have one conversation and have them change their mind in that instance. There were times I had to have multi-layered conversations with my grandmother to get me to go across the street by myself. And so to think that I can sit and have a conversation with her and change her mindset, on homosexuality in one conversation is asinine.
My mother is old, and I don't really mind, but my nephew is 10, and my nephew saw something about a man mentioning his husband. And he goes, ew, he has a husband. And I go, what's the problem? He goes, that's nasty. I go, why? He goes, his mom said so. I don't know. And that, I freaked out on everyone on that. My sister is a 40-year-old religious woman. My mom is a 70-year-old religious woman. Great. You guys can do whatever you want. But my 10-year-old, my nephew is not supposed to be like, this is nasty, because I don't know.
It's not okay. It's not okay. No, there's a lot. Those are the lines in the sand. I will not let the next generation have to deal with this. Like, you guys, all right. And I also will not I will fight the older generation legislating. You don't have to like it, but there will not.
There's
you will
no
not
legislation. Vote. You're not going to actively trip people and yell out racial or gay slur. No, we're not doing that.
Right.
We're not doing that.
Right. There's the battles you have. But that was our weekend, just dealing with old black folks. But my point is that, and I've heard a lot of people talking about it. People were talking about that their pastor said that they don't have to agree, they don't agree with this, but this does not change an election. I've heard a preacher say that from the pulpit. There were levels of this. People discuss this a lot, and it is a complicated thing. And it's hopefully we are watching we are watching a very big time of change in our country. This conversation coming from the president is possibly one of the biggest things, because the fact is that everyone's having the conversation. Everybody. And with one interview, with 11 words, he changed the conversation in the country. That's huge. And I'm happy that we're having the conversation.